You're not lacking motivation. What you're lacking is a system of discipline that operates even when no one is cheering you on, no deadline is chasing you, and no eyes are watching. What you need isn't another motivational video. You've already watched hundreds of those. You've nodded in agreement, felt the chills, even said to yourself, this time I'm going to change. But then what happened? You went right back to the same loop. Its motivation is a spark. Discipline, on the other hand, is the internal combustion engine that keeps pushing you forward regardless of whether you feel like it that day or not, regardless of rain or shine, regardless of whether anyone recognizes you or not. Discipline is the distance between where you are and where you say you want to be. It's not flashy. It doesn't draw attention. It doesn't give you an instant rush, but it is the only reason why some people turn goals into reality while others keep recycling the same excuses. I'm not ready yet. I need more time. I'll start when I feel better. Sound familiar? That's the belief system of someone who operates on emotion instead of a system. Let me tell you this. People with discipline don't wait for feelings. They act on principles. You think successful people are always motivated? No. They have days of burnout, discouragement, and lack of inspiration like anyone else. But here's what sets them apart. They still show up. They still do what needs to be done because the system they've built isn't powered by inspiration. It's built on structure. The question is no longer, do I feel like doing this? But rather, what step am I on today? And then they keep going. No need to rethink, no need to negotiate with themselves. They made the decision long ago, a decision that cannot be reversed. If you feel like your life is drifting by without any clear progress, stop and face the truth. You're not lacking information. You're not lacking dreams. You're not lacking talent. You're only lacking a framework of personal discipline, one that can carry you far beyond temporary passion. And to build this system, you must start with the hard truth. You've let your emotions run the show for far too long. Every time you hit snooze on your alarm, every time you make plans but don't follow through, every time you choose easy over right, you're teaching yourself that promises to yourself don't matter. You're programming your brain to escape instead of confront. And it's these tiny, seemingly harmless choices that quietly erode your self-confidence. You can't build confidence by indulging yourself. You build it by honoring your commitments, even when no one is watching. Discipline is loyalty to your goal, even when the motivation is left. It's doing the same action day in and day out without needing applause. It's saying no to comforting traps, social media, entertainment, pointless distractions, not because you're harsh, but because you know what truly matters. A person without discipline gets pulled in by every noise around them. A person with discipline knows how to cover their ears so they can hear the voice inside saying, I'll do this even if it's hard. You don't need dozens of goals if you have one solid system of discipline, because just one big goal combined with consistent daily repetition is enough to create permanent change. But remember, discipline doesn't come from a sudden burst of determination. It comes from redesigning your life so that doing the right thing becomes easy and doing the wrong thing becomes inconvenient. It's when you set up a distraction-free work environment, when you treat your morning a sacred time to prime your mind. You put your phone down to read one page, not because you're in the mood, but because today is day 67 of your reading streak, and you're not breaking that chain for a moment of laziness. Don't need to know where you are in your journey. Maybe you're starting over after countless failed attempts. Maybe you're at your peak, but feel like you're slipping. Whoever you are, the real question isn't, what do you want? The right question is, do you have a system in place that's moving you toward it? Because if not, then every desire is just a daydream. And you'll once again witness yourself breaking another promise. You don't need to start perfectly. You just need to start. Start building a simple system, a fixed hour to do your most important task, a repeating schedule, a list of 3 things you'll complete each day. You need to turn the right actions into reflexes, not choices, because every time you have to choose, you give emotions a chance to interfere. But if you have a system, you just follow it, no internal debate needed. Face this truth head on. Every major achievement is the accumulation of small, disciplined actions, carried out in silence, without showing off, without the need for praise. What's causing your failure isn't lack of motivation, it's lack of discipline. And what's keeping you stuck isn't that you're not good enough, it's that you haven't stayed loyal to any system long enough to make a difference. Don't wait for inspiration. Don't wait for perfection. Don't wait until you're ready. Build your system, reset your life principles, redesign your environment, commit to one simple action and repeat it regardless of how you feel. That's when you stop being a dreamer, you become someone capable. And that is the first step to rebuilding yourself from a foundation of discipline, not emotion. You've always imagined discipline as something grand, a transformation, a massive commitment, forcing yourself to change completely overnight. But reality is different. Discipline, if it's meant to last, doesn't begin with something heroic. It begins with something so small, you almost dismiss it. And that's exactly the mistake that causes most people to fail. Let me tell you, no one maintains a daily gym habit if they try to start with 1 hour of exhausting workouts. No one finishes 100 books if they start with the pressure of reading 50 pages a day. They quit, not because they lack ability, but because they chose a starting line beyond their own endurance. And then they feel guilty, disappointed, telling themselves they're weak, that they lack willpower. But they don't realize the problem isn't them, the problem lies in the size of the initial commitment. Because the only thing that determines whether you'll stick with a habit is the feeling of, I can do this. If every day you choose something manageable, something just within reach without burning out, you won't just keep that promise, you'll build something even more powerful, belief in yourself. Every time you fall through on a small promise you made to yourself, you're recording in your subconscious, I'm the kind of person who does what I say I will. You don't need anyone to praise you for walking 10 minutes each morning, but your brain registers it, and it reinforces your internal wiring. You slowly form a new identity, a person with discipline, someone who finishes what they start, and that identity doesn't begin with willpower. It begins with a small commitment you can complete today. The problem most people have is they start too big. They want to run a marathon the moment they get off the couch. They want to change their entire life in 7 days. They set goals like read 3 books a week, work out 6 days, wake up at 4 a.m. And they last about 3 days, then crash. Because human psychology doesn't work that way. We hate the feeling of failure. And every time you fall short of your own goals, even if they're positive ones, it still leaves a scratch on your self-trust. You can't build a castle if the foundation is shaky. And one small commitment, repeated daily, is the first brick in that foundation. Choose a habit so small, you can't say no to it. A 30-second plank, 1 page of reading, a glass of warm water first thing in the morning, a thank you note to someone in your day. These actions won't make you a genius in 24 hours, but they trigger a silent chain reaction in your brain. And when you stick to that small promise for 10, 15, 30 days, you're no longer the same person. You'll push back, doing so little, what good is that? But look closely. What you're underestimating is exactly what you've been missing. You're not lacking knowledge, not lacking advice, not lacking dreams. You're lacking a concrete action that you can begin immediately. Something that doesn't get blocked by emotion. What you need isn't to overhaul your life in a week. What you need is to reprogram your internal operating system, the one that determines how you act, how you repeat, and how long you persist. The more successful you are at keeping small commitments, the more you upgrade your self-image from someone who often gives up to someone who always follows through, even with the smallest things. And once you believe you're that kind of person, you'll begin to take on bigger commitments. You might move from 5 minutes of exercise to 15, from 1 page of reading to 10, but it won't feel like pressure because you're growing from the inside out, from a new identity, not forcing yourself from the outside in. Discipline is a kind of strength, and like any muscle, it must be trained with light weights first. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even the smallest one, you're adding another rep to your discipline muscle. You don't build consistency with grand but unsustainable goals. You build it with consistent repetition of tiny actions, so small no one else notices, but you still do them. And the very fact that no one sees makes them even more valuable. Because when you do the right thing without an audience, you're training the most important quality of all, internal discipline. You can't control life, but you can control one small action today. And if you do that for 7 days, you'll change how you see yourself. Do it for 30 days, you'll start building a system. Do it for 90 days, you're no longer someone trying to change. You are someone who has changed. Not because you had a breakthrough, but because you never stopped moving forward. A small commitment is not a compromise, it's a strategy. It's how you trick your brain past procrastination. It's how you overcome emotional swings without relying on willpower every single day. Anytime you ask yourself, where should I begin? Return to one principle. Start with something so simple it's impossible to fail. And then repeat. No inspiration needed, no one to impress. Just show up for yourself, on time. Stop chasing perfection and start pursuing intentional repetition. That's what will change you. Not a great speech, not an inspiring book, not an all-nighter planning your future, but one small, simple, specific action done today, repeated tomorrow, and repeat it again until you no longer have to think about it. You just do it. You don't need 100 big commitments. You only need one small commitment, but carried to the end. Because if you can't complete something small, you'll never finish something big. But if you prove to yourself that you can keep your word every day, then nothing is out of reach. You're not lacking time. You're simply letting time slip away into things that don't deserve a place in your life. People often confuse busyness with progress. They run around all day but get nowhere. They're exhausted because they're doing too many things, none of which are truly bringing them closer to their goals. If you don't know what your priorities are, you'll be drowned by a sea of urgent, shallow, noisy distractions, and none of them will move you forward. Let me tell you, discipline is not just about taking action. It's about choosing the right action, and the right choice only comes when you know what truly matters. Not everything is important. Not everyone needs an immediate response. Not every message needs to be answered. Not every opportunity is worth taking. If you don't know how to say no, you'll live a life pulled in every direction by the urgent, the trivial, and other people's demands, instead of by what you actually need. Imagine your time as a jar. If you pour in the sand first, the trivial things, messages, social media, non-essential tasks, then there won't be room for the big rocks. But if you place the rocks in first, your most important goals, core tasks, essential habits, then the sand can still fill in the gaps. The problem is most people start their day with the sand, and by the end of the day, they sit in tired emptiness because nothing truly changed. You need a system of priorities, not to control time, but to control your life. Because if you don't clearly define what matters most, everything else will hijack your attention, and your attention is your most precious asset. Where your attention goes, growth follows. If you keep pouring your energy into what's urgent but not important, you'll become great at crisis management and a failure at future design. The thing is, priorities don't reveal themselves. You have to sit down and define them. You have to write them out. You have to ask, if I could only accomplish one thing today, what would move me closest to my biggest goal? The answer to that question, that's your priority. Everything else is secondary. And if you don't act on it in the morning, the world will swallow you whole before noon. I know you think you can do everything, but the truth is you can't. You have limits of energy, of focus, of time. And every time you say yes to something meaningless, you're saying no to something that could change your life. Discipline is not just the ability to work hard. It's the ability to not do the wrong things. You have to know when to pause and ask, does this actually serve my goal, or am I just staying busy to avoid facing what really matters? Successful people aren't the ones who do more than you. They do less, but they do it right. They start their day with the biggest task. They don't let emails or messages hijack their mornings. They don't let others fill up their schedule. They guard their time like a strategic asset. They don't just plan. They lock time down through time blocking, reserving fixed hours for what matters, and letting no one intrude. You can start with something simple. Each night, write down the 3 most important things you will do tomorrow. Just 3, no more. And make sure those 3 things serve a clear goal, not some random burst of inspiration. The next morning, before you check social media, before you answer a single message, complete one of those 3 tasks. That's how you take back control. Discipline only works when it's tied to a clear direction. Without it, you might work really hard, but still drift. Hard work cannot replace selectivity. You have to choose. This is worth my life energy. This deserves priority. And you must be willing to let go of the seductive noise of fake busyness, the unnecessary calls, other people's emergencies, the harmless notifications that rob your clarity. Busyness is not a badge of honor. It's a sign of lack of clarity. Busy people often think they're living fully, but they're not living, they're reacting, they're being pulled, they lack intention. And then they burn out without understanding why. Let me tell you, it's not because you're doing too much. It's because you don't know what's truly worth doing. And that is stealing your life minute by minute, hour by hour. Prioritizing doesn't mean you never have fun or flexibility. It just means you live by a system you choose instead of letting circumstances choose for you. And when you live that way, you start to feel the shift, not because you're doing everything, but because you're completing the right things. And that is what gives you the real feeling of progress. A person who knows how to prioritize is someone who respects their time, someone who doesn't need to do everything to feel worthy, someone who knows that every action is a vote for the future they want to build. And if that action doesn't serve that vision, then it's a waste. Focus is not a state, it's a decision. A decision to constantly say no to the secondary so you can pour everything into the essential. Remember, you're not measured by how many things you do each day, you're measured by the quality of what you choose to do. Because in a world full of noise, the one who controls their focus controls their outcomes. And if you want to be that person, start today. Write down what matters most to you. Protect it at all costs. Don't let another day pass just responding to others. Act according to your own order, and let the rest adjust to you. You cannot rely on willpower to change your life, because willpower is the most fragile resource you have. It comes fast, leaves fast, and disappears the moment you're tired, hungry, sad, or simply not in the mood. Have you ever had a morning filled with determination, only for it to vanish by the afternoon? Have you ever promised yourself, starting tomorrow, I'll wake up early, I'll exercise, I'll read every day, and just a few days later, everything returned to how it was? It's not because you're weak, it's because you're trying to change your life by depending on an unstable mechanism. Willpower is a flash fire. If you want to build something sustainable, you need bricks. And the bricks of discipline are habits. Let me tell you, a disciplined person isn't someone who's always inspired. They're just someone whose actions have been automated. They don't wake up every morning wrestling with whether or not to go to the gym. They don't need to push themselves to sit at the desk. They don't wait until they feel ready to act. They do it because it's simply what they do. Simple, natural, without debate. And that's what frees them from the daily exhaustion of trying. You think you need more determination to change? Wrong. You need a strategy. And a strategy begins with building a small habit, done consistently until it becomes a reflex. When the right action has been automated, you no longer need to use energy to do it. Your brain switches to energy saving mode. And only then do you have the capacity to handle harder, more important tasks. Because true discipline doesn't come from constant effort. It comes from optimizing your environment and behavior so that the right action becomes easier than the wrong one. Look at someone who wakes up early consistently. They're not superhuman, they just have a sequence. Going to bed on time, placing the alarm out of reach, laying out clothes the night before, and not allowing themselves to negotiate with the warm bed. These small actions repeated daily make waking up early no longer a battle, but a natural sequence that was pre-designed. But if you argue with yourself every morning, you'll lose. Not because you're weak, but because you're letting willpower fight old habits, and habits always win. If you want to build real discipline, don't start by forcing yourself to do something grand. Start with a small, specific behavior anchored to an existing point in your day. A technique called habit stacking. For example, after brushing your teeth, write down 3 lines of gratitude. After your coffee, open a book and read 1 page. After turning off your alarm, get out of bed and stretch for 30 seconds. When you attach a new habit to a fixed point in your existing routine, you make it easier to remember and easier to repeat. That's how you install habits into your brain without needing force. Another critical factor, environment. If you think you can build good habits in an environment full of temptations, you're toying with your own limits. I don't build success with willpower. I design environments where doing the right thing is the easiest thing. Want to read more? Keep books by your bed. Turn off your phone before sleep. Want to eat healthy? Don't keep junk food in the house. Want to focus at work? Make your desk a social media free zone. Discipline is not about defeating temptation. It's about avoiding exposure to temptation in the first place. You also need to learn to track your behavior. And when you record your progress, even just by marking an X on each day you complete a habit, you activate a psychological mechanism called the chain effect. Once you build up 5, 10, 15 days in a row, you won't want to break the chain. And that becomes your motivation to continue, not because you're thrilled, but because you don't want to disrupt the progress you've already built. Discipline doesn't come from slogans. It comes from consistency that can be clearly measured. Here's something else you need to accept. The habit building process will have good days and bad days. Some days you'll feel full of energy, others you'll be drained. But what separates the discipline from those who fail isn't perfection, it's how they handle the bad days. A disciplined person doesn't let one missed day become an excuse to abandon the whole system. They come back the next day. They don't let a slip turn into surrender. That is the strength of someone who doesn't use willpower to suppress, but uses a system to return to alignment. Stop trying to become a superhero every morning. Make the right behavior reflex. Don't rely on emotion to do what matters. Program it into your system. And don't believe you'll always have motivation, because when it disappears, as it always does, your habits will be the only thing left keeping you moving forward. When you build a chain of good habits, whether it's sleeping early, drinking water, reading, exercising, journaling, you're creating a compounding effect. One good habit often triggers another. When you work out regularly, you tend to eat better. When you eat well, you sleep more deeply. When you sleep well, you focus better. When you focus, you perform better. When you perform better, you gain confidence. And the cycle of progress continues, not because you have more willpower than others, but because you have a better operating system. The discipline is an endless effort. It's the outcome of properly shaped behavior. And you don't need to change your whole life today. You only need to choose one habit, small, specific, repeatable, and begin. Don't let emotion decide. Don't let circumstances interfere. Just stick to the time, the action, the commitment, repeat. And you'll be surprised you become a disciplined person, not by force, not by struggle, but by doing the right thing at the right time long enough. You don't need to defeat every temptation. You just need to delay it. That is the difference between someone who constantly fails by trying to force themselves to resist everything and someone who steadily moves toward their goals day after day. If you think discipline means saying no to every moment of weakness, every instant craving, every lazy impulse, then you're playing a game you're guaranteed to lose, because no one can win against temporary willpower forever. But if you understand that you don't have to eliminate urges completely, just postpone them, then the game begins to shift and you become the one in control. Let me tell you, what causes you to give up isn't weakness, it's the fact that you're trying to force yourself to quit everything all at once. You see discipline as an all-out war with yourself, every moment requiring grit, strain, and clenched teeth to resist temptation. And the first time you slip, you think you're a failure. But if you learn to delay rather than deny, you unlock a new option, the option of intention, not pressure. You see fast food in front of you, don't think you have to say no forever. Just say, I'll eat it in 10 minutes if I still want it. You feel an urge to scroll social media? Say, I'll check my phone after I focus on this task for 10 minutes. Delaying temptation is the smartest tactic to maintain discipline without feeling deprived, because your brain doesn't interpret it as restriction. It sees it as a small, temporary agreement, and most of the time, after a few minutes, the craving cools down and fades. Without having to fight. Understand the nature of temptation. It's a strong emotional wave, but a short one. It doesn't last. When you learn to pause for a beat, you're letting that wave pass without letting it sweep you away. Like a swimmer who doesn't panic when they fall into water, they simply float, breathe, and wait for the current to settle. You too can do that. Every time a craving hits, oversleeping, procrastinating, overeating, impulsive spending, just pause, breathe, and tell yourself, I'll decide in 10 minutes. You just cut the wire between desire and action. And that's when control returns to your hands. I'm not asking you to become some emotionless machine, never enjoying anything in life. I'm simply showing you a way to delay short-term gratification in exchange for long-term reward. This isn't deprivation. It's investment. You're not refusing sweets forever. You're choosing to eat them after a full week of healthy meals. You're not denying yourself rest. You're postponing rest until after your core task is complete, and you realize the things you thought were indispensable often aren't worth it after you've passed the first wave of urge. Delaying temptation helps you maintain your system of discipline because it doesn't make you feel like you're losing something. It doesn't force you into suffering or extreme sacrifice. It simply trains you to tolerate a little waiting. And that ability to wait, even just 5 minutes, is what separates someone who completes their goals from someone constantly pulled by instant emotion. You don't need to erase every desire, you just need to stop being a slave to them. The only way to do that is to build a habit of delay. Every time you want to do something that harms your progress, ask yourself, does this bring me closer to or farther from what I truly want? And if it pulls you away, delay it by 10 minutes. Do nothing. Just observe the feeling. Breathe, count down. If after 10 minutes you still want it, then reassess. But most of the time, you won't need to act. The wave will have passed. Delaying temptation is also how you reset the nervous system. You shift from reaction mode to observation mode. You stop letting your brain steer you wherever it pleases. You interrupt the reflex loop with a small pause, and that pause becomes the birthplace of growth. Because a mature person doesn't act on impulse, they act on values. And delay is the bridge between instinct and intention. And one powerful tool you can use is your future self, PJAM. When temptation strikes, close your eyes and imagine the future version of yourself, the one who kept the promise, achieved the goal, built the body, the career, the life you've always wanted. Let that image become vivid. Then ask, would that version of me do what I'm about to do? If the answer is no, delay. No need for guilt. No need to force yourself. Just wait a few minutes. So your actions are guided by vision, not emotion. Delaying doesn't kill emotions. It simply keeps you clear-headed long enough to choose a better behavior. And when you repeat this often enough, you start rewriting your brain's wiring. You're no longer the person dragged by old habits. You become the one in charge of the chain of actions. You respond with intention. And from there, discipline stops being effort, it becomes strength. Don't expect discipline to be the suppression of all desire. See it as the ability to stretch the space between impulse and action. The longer you can stretch that space, even by just a few minutes, the more choices you have. And choice is where freedom begins. If you can delay temptation today, you'll be clearer tomorrow. If you repeat it long enough, you'll find you no longer have to fight because you've risen above the urge, and you'll look back at yourself with respect, not because you said no to the world, but because you knew when to wait. No one succeeds by improvisation. No one achieves great results by living each day based on emotions. If you want to go far, truly far, you need a serious schedule, not a suffocatingly packed timetable, but an intentional structure where every hour holds clear meaning, a system designed by you, not shaped by circumstance. You can't build a strategic repetition on a foundation of scattered actions. You need strategic repetition. You need anchor points in your day that ground you in the present and pull you forward, no matter how chaotic the world around you gets. Think back to the days when you felt most proud of yourself. Were those the days when you wandered aimlessly, doing whatever you felt like? Or were they the days you woke up early, completed the most important task, and ended the day with clarity, even if no one knew and no one applauded? I know the answer. Because pride doesn't come from instant results. It comes from taking control of your time. And that control only appears when you sit down, plan your day, and commit to it like a promise that cannot be broken. A schedule doesn't take away your freedom. It is the only thing that protects your freedom, because if you don't plan your time, someone else will. Work, messages, other people, social media, all are waiting to snatch away every minute of your day. And you think you're just busy? No, you're living in a machine you didn't build. Busyness is not an achievement. A serious schedule is the mark of someone mature, someone intentional. You need a schedule not just to know what to do, but to remind yourself daily, where am I going? A schedule isn't a robotic task list, it's a roadmap. And you can't reach your destination if you don't know what the next stop is. Spend 10 minutes each evening listing the 3 most important tasks for tomorrow. Don't need 10 massive goals, just 3. So long as they bring you closer to your long-term vision. That's how you design progress, day by day, hour by hour, through intentional rhythm. Discipline cannot survive if you start every morning in confusion. If you wake up not knowing what your first action is, you begin your day in reaction, not intention, and when you react, you lose control. Procrastination, distractions, external noise, they will all flood in to fill the void. In contrast, a person with a serious schedule always knows, this morning, here's my top priority. By noon, this needs to be done. Tonight, here's how I'll close the day. They don't need to overthink it because they already thought it through yesterday. An effective day starts with an organized morning, and a good morning only happens if you planned it the night before. It may sound small, but that bedtime preparation is the foundation of a complete day. You won't need to scramble for ideas. When you wake up, you won't waste 30 minutes getting into the groove. Everything's ready. You just execute. That's how you conserve willpower and use it only on what truly matters. Don't let your schedule mean theory. Use it as a commitment. Write it down. Place it where you can see it. Treat it like an important appointment with your future. If you're willing to cancel a meeting with yourself just because someone invites you for coffee, don't be surprised when you make no progress, because you're teaching others and yourself that you don't value your personal commitments. A schedule is not just time, it's prioritization. It's how you define what is non-negotiable. To make your schedule work, apply one essential principle: time blocking. Instead of working from a to-do list, assign each task to a specific time slot. 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock is for writing. 10:30 p.m. is 11:30 is for meetings. 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock is for skill building. When you assign tasks to time blocks, you make them part of your structure. And when each piece has its place, you're no longer wondering, what should I do now? You act, you move, you lead. A serious schedule must also include space for rest. You can't work 12 hours a day and call it discipline. That's self-destruction. Strategic rest is part of discipline. It's knowing when to shut the laptop, step away from the desk, take a walk, sit in stillness, or talk with loved ones. The key is schedule your rest. You control your recovery time so it doesn't interrupt your work hours out of burnout. A person who knows how to manage energy is the one who can go the distance. You don't need to cram everything into one day, but you do need a schedule that repeats long enough to form a rhythm of life. Then each new day is no longer a gamble. It becomes a steady, deliberate step forward. You're not drifting, you're not chasing situations. You're advancing hour by hour, day by day, according to a plan you wrote yourself. Most importantly, treat your schedule like a moral contract. If you set 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock to study, then at 9 o'clock you sit down, whether you feel like it or not, whether someone texts you or not. Even if you're tired, you begin. Not because you're a robot, but because you're someone who acts based on values, not emotions. And that small act, on time, on task, repeated daily, is what keeps you aligned with the path you chose. Discipline cannot survive chaos. It needs a strong framework to exist. And your schedule is that framework. You can't wait to find time, you have to make time. Without a serious schedule, you're just reacting to life. But when you design your day, you begin to redesign your life. No one is born mediocre, but many people choose to live a mediocre life simply because they fear difficulty, they fear uncertainty, they fear rejection, they fear failure, they fear starting something without knowing how it will turn out. And that very fear, repeated day after day, silently shapes a small, limited life. You're not weak, you've just let fear steer you for too long. And that has kept you living inside your comfort zone. A place with no real challenge, but also no real progress. A place with no danger, but also no meaningful achievement. A place where everything feels pleasant, but Nothing makes you proud. Let me tell you this. If you want to live differently, you have to act differently. And the first thing you need to do is face the truth that anything truly worth having will come with difficulty. There are no shortcuts, no easy paths. No one truly grows in comfortable conditions. Every lasting transformation requires you to pass through discomfort, unfamiliarity, and sometimes even pain. And the more you avoid it, the more you freeze your own potential, because the only thing standing between you and the life you want isn't other people, it's your threshold for difficulty. Difficulty is not your enemy, it's the first teacher for anyone who wants to grow. It's the only test that reveals how serious you are about your goal. Everyone says they want success, but when faced with loneliness, with the boring repetition, with the frustration of seeing no results, they back down. And in that very moment, they take the path of mediocrity, not because they lack talent, but because they don't have the courage to stay in the hard part long enough for it to become. Here's the truth. Difficulty won't kill you. It's your reaction to difficulty that determines everything. When you face a challenge, you have two options. Either see it as a sign to stop, or see it as a chance to upgrade. A weak person says, maybe this isn't for me. A disciplined person says, this is teaching me something I don't yet know. And only the second type has a chance to meet a better version of themselves. The more you fear discomfort, the more you lose your adaptability. The more you avoid challenge, the more you shrink your range of experience. And when your experience shrinks, your world shrinks too. Big opportunities do not come to those who can't handle pressure. New doors do not open for those who always take the easy way. Because everything worthwhile in life is placed behind a door labeled difficult. Not to keep you out, but to test if you're serious enough to enter. When life gets hard, don't ask why me. Ask, what am I here to learn? Every challenge doesn't come to hurt you, it comes to sharpen you. Just as diamonds are only formed under extreme pressure, humans only reveal their real strength when placed in demanding environments. And if you keep choosing what's easy, you're digging a deeper hole where your confidence, self-respect, and sense of worth get buried under layers of avoidance. The irony is, the more you avoid difficulty, the harder life becomes. When you fear conversation, you avoid speaking, you miss connection, and eventually isolate yourself. When you fear starting a new project, you procrastinate and find yourself constantly falling behind. When you fear failure, you don't try and live with long-lasting regret. Meanwhile, the person who accepts discomfort opens a bigger door, not because they're better than you, but because they stayed with the discomfort a little longer, long enough to see that it's not as scary as it seemed. To build real discipline, you must train yourself to stay in discomfort without panicking. Breathe deeply, don't react too fast, don't run immediately, practice standing still, observe, take small steps, and you'll discover. Difficulty cannot break you. It's only testing whether you truly mean what you say. If you collapse at the first outer layer, maybe you're not ready for the world you dream of. Successful people aren't fearless. They're just the ones who choose to keep going, even while afraid. They learn to live with discomfort. They're willing to do what they're not good at, to face awkwardness, to step into spaces where no one has given them a map. And that courage, repeated every day, is what eventually sets them apart. If you're waiting until you feel ready, you'll never start. If you're waiting until you're no longer afraid, you'll be waiting forever. There's only one way. Act first, let the fear follow. Every time you dare to do something hard, you expand your capacity. You send a message to your brain. I'm not running, I can handle this. And that tolerance, not knowledge, not skills, is what determines how far you'll go. Success doesn't choose comfort seekers, it chooses the consistent. It doesn't cater to your emotions. It demands that you grow up enough to keep going even when tired, uncertain, or alone. And if you don't train yourself to become familiar with that feeling, you'll surrender every time you hit a limit. Let me tell you, if you want to break through, you have to step into the zone you've never been in. And that place will not be easy, but that's exactly what makes it valuable. You cannot build an extraordinary life by always choosing the safest option. You cannot grow in ease, and you cannot be proud of yourself if you've never overcome the thing that made you want to quit. No one is coming to save you. There's no life raft being dropped from an invisible helicopter. No god of luck will show up at the perfect moment to change your life. No teacher, lover, friend, or family member can do your part for you. They can love you, help you, guide you, but no one can live your life for you. You can blame your family, your circumstances, or society, but at the end of the day, when you're alone facing yourself in the mirror, only one truth remains. If you don't stand up, no one will do it for you. I'm telling you this not to make you feel heavy, but because you deserve the truth. The truth wakes you up. It frees you from the illusion that one day things will magically get better. There is no such day. There is no perfect moment. There is no savior. There's only you, with these hands, with this schedule, with the choices you make over and over again. And the only thing powerful enough to pull you out of the pit of procrastination, self-pity, and confusion is discipline. Discipline is not a harsh tool. It is the highest form of kindness you can give yourself, because you know that this version of you, if left to drift with emotion, with old reflexes, with let's see how today goes, will never break through. The more you wait for someone to help you, the more you lose your ability to help yourself. The more you rely on external forces, the more disconnected you become from your internal strength. And eventually you live with a victim mentality, always hoping someone will rescue you, sympathize, take your hand. But life isn't fair enough for that. And it's not cruel enough either. It's simply a world that belongs to those who act. Disciplined people aren't cold-hearted. They just understand one thing clearly. No one can do this for me, so I must do it myself. They don't blame life. They don't complain about their fate. They don't post pain online waiting for likes to feel better. They wake up early, start with what needs to be done, follow their schedule, keep promises to themselves, and that repetition builds a quiet, enduring inner power. They're not the ones always saying they're tired, but they also don't wait to be full of energy to begin. They work even when tired. They act even when their mood is off. They do it because they made a promise to themselves. And that promise to yourself is more sacred than any other. I know you've wished someone would take your hand and lift you up, and maybe someone once did. But if you don't take the next step yourself, you'll always return to the same place. Because if your motivation always depends on others, you'll never stand on your own. You'll live your whole life needing to be fired up, but never learning how to create your own flame. I don't want you to live like that. And I want you to live like that. I want you to become the person who can flip the switch on your own, who doesn't need excitement to begin, who doesn't need someone to call you forward. Just the quiet knowing, I made a commitment to myself and I act. Discipline is the only thing that keeps you on track when your emotions are in chaos. It's the tool that helps you build a bridge from where you are to where you truly want to be. It doesn't depend on circumstances. It doesn't depend on feelings. It doesn't wait for inspiration. It just needs you to be awake and to choose correctly, repeatedly. And each time you do, not only you get closer to your goal, you also rebuild trust in yourself. That trust cannot be given by anyone, cannot be taken by anyone, and cannot be replaced by anyone. Don't live like a victim in your own story. Pick up the pen and rewrite the direction. Use each day, each time block, each small action to reconstruct who you are. You don't need to change the world. Just change how you wake up, how you begin your day, how you respond when things don't go your way, how you sit down, even when tired, to write another 100 words, to learn one more concept, or to simply not give up. That is discipline. The act of someone saving themselves bit by bit every single day. And remember, no one starts out strong. Everyone was once weak, once avoided, once dependent, but there will come a moment when you must ask yourself, when will I finally take full responsibility for this life? When you ask that question, you take one step out of your old mindset. And if you're brave enough to keep walking, you'll realize all the power has always been in your hands. You don't need to wait for it to come from someone else. You don't need to become a superhero, just need to become someone who takes responsibility. That person won't be perfect. They'll get tired, they'll move slowly at times, but they'll never hand over their power to someone else. They know everything can be lost, but if I still have my discipline, then I still have everything, because discipline is the one thing no one can steal. This is the spine within you, holding you upright through every storm outside. No one is coming to save you, but you don't need them. You already have every tool you need: awareness, time, choice. And discipline is how you connect those three. Every right action you choose today, no matter how small, is a rope you throw toward the other side. And if you are persistent enough, serious enough, loyal enough to right action, you will pull yourself toward a new version of you. Brighter, stronger, more sovereign, without depending on a soul. You're not lacking time, you're just letting your time flow in the wrong direction. Other people have the same 24 hours as you, but some use every minute to move forward while you wonder why your day passes without anything meaningful getting done. You call it being busy, but being busy is not the same as being effective. A packed schedule doesn't mean progress. The truth is, you're busy doing meaningless things, tasks that give you the feeling of doing but don't bring you any closer to your actual goals. Let me be direct. If you keep pouring your time into things that don't create value, videos you can't even remember, conversations that lead nowhere, unnecessary messages, mindless phone checking, then don't ask why you always feel like you don't have enough time. Time is still there, but you've given it away to things that don't deserve it. You think 5 minutes scrolling doesn't matter, but repeat that 20 times a day and you've lost 100 minutes. An hour and a half for things you can't recall, don't improve you, and don't align with anything you say you want. He's like, I don't have time to read, but you have time to watch 12 TikTok videos in a row. You say, I want to start a business, but my job is too demanding. Yet every night you sit in front of a screen until 1 a.m. just for entertainment and then complain that you're tired. You're not lacking time. You're lacking a system for filtering noise. Pause and look honestly. If I asked you how much time you spent yesterday on the most important thing in your life, could you answer? Or would you just say you were busy? Busy doing what? You're not sure. Feels like work, but with no progress. That's the loop of fake busyness, a form of scattered energy disguised by a schedule, and is what's silently eating away at the results you could have had day by day, hour by hour. To break out of this, you don't need more time. You need to cut. You need to learn how to eliminate. Keep asking, does this move me closer to my goal? If not, cut it, even if it's fun, even if it's popular, even if everyone else is doing it. Nothing kills potential faster than pouring time into things that don't serve your real purpose. That's the trap of modern life, making you feel like you're living fully when you're just existing in a zone of passive consumption. Time's the fairest asset on earth. Everyone gets the same. But how you use it clearly separates those who stay average from those who make a difference. You may not be richer than others, not more talented, but you can always use time better. And if you do it long enough, you'll surpass them, not loudly, just consistently. Scheduling isn't about restriction, it's how you protect your time before someone else takes it. If you don't know when you'll study, you won't study. If you don't set time blocks for your main work, distractions will fill the space. And if you don't draw clear boundaries with distractions, you'll spend your whole morning just getting warmed up. Let me ask you, when was the last time you had a morning without interruption, without checking your phone, without letting others decide what you do? If you can't remember, that's a sign your life is being controlled by meaningless things, moment by moment. And the most dangerous part, it doesn't cause immediate damage, it just pulls you back slowly. Each day you lose a bit of clarity, a bit of drive, a bit of a discipline, until one day you realize you're still in the same place while others have gone far ahead. I'm not asking you to eliminate all entertainment or all rest. I'm just telling you, know the difference between consumption and investment. 1 hour spent reading, learning, redesigning your goals, that's investment. 1 hour spent watching shows, that's consumption. You can't fill your time account with nothing but consumption and expect a return. Be alert. Manage time the way you manage money, or even more seriously, because you can earn back money, but you can never earn back time. With one simple action. Track how you use your time in a day, hour by hour. Write down what you did. Don't judge, just observe. Then in the evening, sit down and review how many hours were spent on what you said matters most, how many were just putting out fires, how many slipped by without you noticing, what behavior kept repeating, And you'll be surprised to find that your lack of time is actually unconsciousness. Time doesn't need to be found, it needs to be reclaimed from the things that are stealing it. Social media, emails, pointless conversations, aimless news scrolling, multitasking, social obligations you don't actually want. Learn to say no, not because you're arrogant, but because you know what's worthy of your energy. The clearer you are, the sharper your time becomes. And when time is sharp, results become sharp too. If each day you reclaim just 1 hour from waste, that's 365 hours in a year. That's more than 15 full days. 15 days you can use to learn, to build, to shift the trajectory of your life. Don't underestimate a minute. Every minute is a brick. And what are you building with those bricks? A solid house or a wall? Blocking your path, kind of lacking time. But you'll always feel like you are if you don't know how to reserve it for what truly matters. And the moment you begin to respect time the way you respect your dreams, you'll see everything start to move. Not quickly, but clearly, sustainably, and irreversibly. Discipline is not about force. It's not the whip you use to beat yourself every time you're lazy or make a mistake. It's not a string of harsh commands that strip away your freedom, joy, or ease in life. On the contrary, discipline at its deepest level is the highest act of self-respect. It is an unspoken declaration that says, I matter enough to keep my word to myself. Every time you uphold discipline, you are proving to yourself that you are trustworthy. And if there's one thing that determines your confidence, it's this, your ability to trust yourself. Let me tell you this, disciplined people don't live by pressure. They live by values. They don't work hard because someone forces them to. They do it because they know what's worth it. They don't wake up early out of fear of judgment. They rise early because they've chosen the path of those who don't run from life. They don't eat healthy, study, exercise, or train because they're told to. They do it because they understand this body is an asset, this mind is a tool, this time is a resource, and all of it must be managed with seriousness, not carelessness. The weak see discipline as a cage. The mature see it as strength. The difference lies in how you see yourself. If you see yourself as fragile, you'll avoid all structure and commitment. But if you start treating yourself as someone worthy of investment, worthy of being built up, worthy of expectations, then you'll realize there is nothing more beautiful than doing what's right because you deserve what's right. Self-respect isn't about catering to your emotions. It's not, I don't feel like it, so I'll skip it, or I'm tired, so I'll rest, or I'm lazy today, so I'll try tomorrow. That's the lifestyle of someone who believes their fleeting emotions matter more than their long-term goals. But if you truly know what you want, and if you truly believe you deserve something better, you won't let emotions lead. You'll let values guide. And discipline is the compass that keeps you aligned with your values, even when it rains, even when you're sleep deprived, even when loneliness screams in your head, even when laziness begs to take over. Every act of discipline, no matter how small, is a brick you lay in the foundation of self-respect. When you say you'll read every day and you actually read, you strengthen your trust in yourself. And you promise not to eat unhealthy food during the week and you keep that promise. You're building the image of a reliable person. Every time you keep your word to yourself, you amplify the strength of your inner voice. And soon you no longer need validation. You don't need reminders. You don't need to feel motivated because you trust you. And that's the greatest power. I know we used to think discipline is rigid, joyless, restrictive, but in truth, it's the lack of discipline that kills real joy. Because a life without discipline is a life filled with chaos, unfinished tasks, and constant frustration with yourself. It's waking up every day with a list of things undone, promises unkept, goals untouched. It's looking back at a week, a month, a year, and seeing the same mistakes repeated, the same priorities postponed, the same guilt for knowing what's right but not doing it. In contrast, the disciplined aren't always joyful, but they possess something the undisciplined never feel: deep satisfaction. not because the results are perfect, but because they know they did their part. They showed up, they acted, they moved forward, and even with flaws, they can look in the mirror without shame. They know they didn't betray themselves, and that's the foundation they use to keep going tomorrow, the next day, and for the rest of their life. Elephant isn't a whip, it's an embrace that protects you from your own weakness. You will always feel the urge to quit, to rest too early, to give up when there are no results. But if you have discipline, you have a system to hold yourself together. You don't need to suppress your emotions. You just don't let emotions make the decisions. And that is the difference between living impulsively and living with direction. When you practice discipline as an expression of self-respect, you'll be surprised at how others begin to treat you. Because those who respect themselves carry a very distinct energy. They don't need to act tough. Yet, others naturally become more serious, more punctual, more responsible, simply because their presence silently says, I don't live carelessly. And you don't need to say it out loud. Your disciplined actions each day will speak for themselves. If you want to live a life without regret, you must begin by respecting every minute you have. Respect your health, respect your word, respect your schedule, respect your plans, respect your true emotions, but don't become a slave to them. And there is no better way to do all of that than to build discipline as a way of life. You don't need to change who you are. You only need to raise your standard of living. Don't live like someone who always needs to be pulled up by others. Live like someone kind enough not to abandon themselves. Discipline isn't harshness. It's loyalty to the best version of yourself you know you can become. And if today you're tired, lost, or ready to give up, then start again with the simplest thing. Do one thing you promised yourself you'd do. Just one. Do it not because someone's watching. Do it because you told yourself. And when you complete it, you'll send a powerful signal to the deepest part of you. I respect you. I'm here. I'm not leaving you. That is discipline. That is foundation. That is a strength no one can ever take from you.